Tadasi Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Arupa Nuga Guru Varga ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Bhagina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhajantamana Petyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tam Mayatayo Tarabo Binedustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmadi Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashi Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashi Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our Rupa Nuga Guru Varga, Dandavat pranams, and all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So we're working our way through this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Many of these pastimes aren't discussed so much, actually, unless you're having a regular reading of the whole Bhagavatam. But in most cases, many of these topics aren't discussed so commonly, so it's helpful for us just to refresh and go through these topics. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when he begins describing this canto, describes Shukadev Goswami as being the master of the world and the eye of the universe. He has the ability to enter all souls and impart this knowledge. A very exceptional personality, the parrot of Sri Radha, ultimately. And also, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, at the very beginning of this canto, he describes Krishna as being the life and controller of the gopis. All the way through, as I said before, in his commentaries, he's at any opportunity bringing in Braj Leela. Braj Leela is our sadhya. This is the warm place, the madhurya place that the devotee wants to reach, this madhurya conception, this madhurya mentality. So when we're doing our sadhan bhajan, we should understand very clearly what is the sadhya of our sadhan, what is the purpose of our sadhan. 3 types of bhakti: sadhan bhakti, bhav bhakti, prem bhakti. So we are performing our sadhan bhakti to achieve bhav bhakti. This is our goal, this is our intention. In the 22nd chapter of Jayavadharma, it's described very clearly the nature of bhav bhakti. Bhav bhakti has to be understood from the beginning. And then we're entering into these topics, not separate from that seeking, hopeful, that place of bhav bhakti, through these topics. So, yesterday we discussed half of the second stage. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was very kindly divided these chapters, 33 chapters altogether in this third canto, into 6 stages to make it more accessible for us. We can focus on each particular stage, see it as a whole package, and understand where it fits in with the whole other 12 cantos, and we can start to appreciate it from that perspective. Not simply just the actual topics described, but to try and put them in context with the rest of the Bhagavatam, how it fits. So we have been doing that by extensively discussing the different personalities. Because the personalities, as I said before, have been in the presence of Sri Krishna. And they've received that darshan in their hearts. So they are able to project that darshan directly of Krishna. So when we're talking about Vidura, he's able to actually, like a sun, push out his appreciation of the Supreme Lord. It's very interesting that at different stages in his questioning of Maitreya, we see his enthusiasm rises to just hear the topics of Krishna. Actually, after this description of Sarga and Visarga by Lord Brahma, then we hear about Varahadev. So how does Varahadev suddenly come into this at this point? It's because Vidura's heart has risen and he's asking Maitreya, please tell me more directly about Krishna. I want to know directly about his pastimes. So then there's the beautiful pastime of Lord Varahadev. He wants to hear those personal pastimes. So where we reached yesterday was up to the creative prayers by Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma says the most beautiful prayers, actually, crying out for Krishna's mercy to create this phenomenal cosmic manifestation. That is his duty, that he is born for this in the mode of passion. This is his birth. This is why he's manifested. And that mode of passion is completely in agreement with Krishna's desires. It's not that mode of passion within the heart of Brahma has to be purified and come to the mode of sattva. No, there's a purpose for that. He has to create the material worlds. So in this 9th chapter, he's asking these prayers, beautiful prayers for creation. And then we described yesterday, we read directly Krishna's reciprocation to those prayers. Very, very beautiful. But I was thinking this morning, we don't discuss so much the character and nature of Lord Brahma himself. We've discussed the character and nature of Vidura. We've discussed the character and nature of Uddhava. We've discussed something of the character and nature of Maitreya. Certainly Shukadev Goswami a couple of months ago we discussed, and Parikshit Maharaj we discussed. These personalities who are carrying these essential teachings and instructions of the Bhagavatam throughout all the 12 cantos, 18,000 verses. They're carrying it through, these personalities. That's what's holding it. So who is Lord Brahma? Himself, of course, he doesn't have a mother or a father, so he has no sort of like... So it's not so easy for us to relate with this personality. And actually part of that is because he received a curse from his wife, Saraswati, or Savitri, she's sometimes called. This is described in the Padma Purana, one pastime there, of how Lord Brahma, he killed a demon called Brajarasha. And he killed it with his lotus flower weapon, it's described. I don't actually know what that looks like. I've never seen a painting of it or a photograph of his lotus flower weapon. Anyway, it broke in three when he killed this demon, and the 3 petals landed in Pushkar. They landed in 3 different places in Pushkar. There's one lake is called Jayeshta Pushkar, another place is called Madhya Pushkar, and another place is called Kanishta Pushkar. There are 3 lakes which were formed by the falling of these lotus flowers. So Lord Brahma, he decided to go to that place and have a yajna to purify that killing of that demon. So he called 4 different hills in the 4 directions and established their potency and to protect, and asked the demigods, please, you reside on these hills to protect this place of Pushkar while I perform a yajna. I don't want to be disturbed by the demons while I'm doing it again. So everything was set up, and then he called his wife, Saraswati, because the wife has to be present to offer the oblations into the fire as part of the Brahminical sacrificial ritual. So he asked Narad to please go and bring Saraswati, Savitri. But she wasn't ready, and she was delayed. So Lord Brahma was there, and the timing, of course, as we know, is most essential for the performance of any yajna. The tithi has to be exactly spot on. So especially if Lord Brahma, the grandfather of all yajnas, is performing this. So he asked Indra, please give me another wife, quickly. I need a wife here. So Indra arranged for one cowherd girl to actually be his wife. But because she was a lower caste, she was impure. So they passed her through the body of a cow. They can do things like that, these personalities. And when she came out the other side, of course, she's utterly pure, completely pure from top to bottom. So therefore her caste can be elevated because of her purity. So then her name was given as Gayatri. This was her name, Gayatri. So she resided next to Lord Brahma while he performed the yajna. And she offered the oblations. She has a pot on her head and she offers the oblations. And then, of course, Saraswati came and was outraged that Lord Brahma had taken another wife without even consulting her, without even having anything to do with her. So then she cursed Lord Brahma that he would never be glorified exceptionally in this world. There would never be places of his glorification in this world. And she also cursed Agni Dev, who was the fire, that he would become all-devouring. He would always want to take more and more. And she cursed... She cursed Indra for supplying... She cursed Indra for supplying the wife that he would always be defeated by his enemies. And she cursed the Brahmanas that they would never be wealthy. And Gayatri, due to her purity from taking part in that sacrifice, could dilute those curses and say that actually Lord Brahma's place of Pushkar would be the most worshipable tirtha in all of the world, that Pushkar would be the most famous of tirthas, and that Indra would never lose his kingdom of heaven. That would always be strong, so that offset that. And that the Brahmanas, due to their scholarship and knowledge, would always be venerated. So Gayatri, she sort of softens it like this. But we see in the world that Lord Brahma, he's never worshipped excessively. We don't see, like Lord Shivji, every single place you go on the planet, you see a Shiva Lingam somewhere, anywhere, especially in Braj. Every little village has a Shiva Lingam, right? Anywhere you go, Lord Shivji's influence is there. But we don't have that with Lord Brahma. We're not reminded of Lord Brahma excessively like we are other devas, like Ganeshji, for example, and Shivji. We're reminded so much of them. So to contemplate this personality, Lord Brahma, and to appreciate this curse that doesn't give us as much opportunity to glorify him as the other devas, is just an interesting point. But here in the creation, of course, Lord Brahma is the grandfather. He was the first jiva to take birth. Lord Brahma is described as having 55 transcendental qualities. The jiva has 50. This is described in Jivadharma. And the 50 qualities of the jiva are much, much less, but nevertheless they're still categorized as having 50. Lord Brahma has 55. And Lord Shiva, he has 55 also, but to a greater degree. So actually Lord Shiva is the most powerful out of all the demigods. Nevertheless, I'm just trying to build a meditation on Lord Brahma, because it's Lord Brahma that we're going to discuss to some degree today. It's what we discussed yesterday. So who is this personality? What is his relationship with Krishna? What is his mood towards Krishna? We know from the beautiful pastime of Haridas that this is also Lord Brahma and Prahlad. So we see the excessive humility, in particular, that Haridas demonstrates in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is also a reflection of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma has seen Garbhodakshai Vishnu, we described yesterday. He's saying these prayers directly to him. How could he not feel humbled by actually seeing that Supreme Personality of Godhead? But what is his rasa? What is his mood? What is his nature? What is his, bhav, etc.? It's not really described greatly. Do you remember Vichitri, Gurudev, mentioning many things about this particular aspect of Lord Brahma? His, where is he, what is his rasa, etc.? Right, beautiful, yes. He's Brahma Parvat in Varshana. So how could he not be so attracted to Sri Radha? His four heads make those Parvats in Varshana. And also he wanted to take birth as the stone that the Brijabasis clean their feet on. So how much attached he was to Braja Lila. The whole purpose of our Bhagavatam is to become immersed in the 10th canto. We're hearing these pastimes from the 3rd canto, but still our hearts are with Venugit, Pranaya Git, Gopi Git, Yugal Git, Varaha Git, Brahmara Git. This is where our hearts are really wanting to come to. And in the evenings we should be meditating on those pastimes, on that sweetness. That's where it's all building, leading to. Nevertheless, the Bhagavatam itself is Krishna directly. And I was thinking this morning, it's like getting to know somebody. If you know all these small intricate details of the creation, Krishna is very pleased that you've taken the trouble and the time to actually understand his creation. It's like if somebody works at a job, but you're not really so interested in what they do, or you're just interested in your direct relationship. You haven't really endeared yourself that much to that person, but someone who's fascinated by everything that you do, then surely Krishna would become more endeared to us by taking the trouble to actually understand. I mean, creating the cosmic manifestation isn't such a small thing. It's like the biggest creation in existence that we have comprehension of. And it's fascinating, all the, details throughout. I'm trying to say this in the sense of what is our purpose, what is our aim and object. We're trying to develop our deeper attraction for Radha and Krishna. This is the goal. This is what is Bhav Bhakti. That attraction to Radha and Krishna becomes increased more and more and more. So this is the object. So we don't want to take this just as gyan or out of context. We want to see it from this angle, from this perspective. So we take an interest, a fascinating interest, to please Sri Radha and Krishna, that we have taken that trouble in our lives at some point to understand, the 3rd canto in particular. Yeah. Of course. It was his desire to take birth as all the sons of all the different gopis. It was his desire to take birth as the calves of the cows. So Yogamaya arranged this beautiful pastime. Thank you, Vichitra. This is one of Lord Brahma's most beautiful pastimes, actually. This Brahma Vimohan Lila. We learn so much from that. That is such a beautiful pastime. When Krishna takes the form of all the cowherd boys, so that when he returns from the forest, all the mothers normally run to Krishna. But now they're all running to their own sons. And the cows are so enamored by their calves. Baladev has never seen it like that. Like right at the end when the cows break loose and they run down that very rough terrain, and the cowherd men are very angry and they come running down. And then Baladev is watching this scene. Why did those cows break through to just come with these 1-year-old calves? They're not even the baby calves. What is that phenomena? And why are the cowherd men, once they come down here really, really angry, as soon as they see their sons, they just melt. They take their sons on their laps and they're kissing them, they're smelling their heads, etc. And he's wondering, he turns to Krishna, he says, what's happening here? And then Krishna reveals all his Vishnu forms, all his expansions as these calves and cowherd boys. And Baladev says, well, why didn't you tell me about this before? And then Krishna says, because I knew you would miss your darling Sridham too much if I told you at the beginning. Very, very beautiful moods that actually are there between Baladev and Krishna. And this whole pastime, as Vichitra Didi was saying, is exceptional. And from this then, Lord Brahma is eligible for that birth as Haridas in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime. So this is who is Lord Brahma. So now, Lord Brahma, he's said his prayers for creative energy in the 9th chapter. And Krishna has reciprocated. And then he's sitting on the lotus and he wants to create the worlds. So he divides the lotus first into 3 and then again into 14, so that there are 3 planetary systems. Each system has 7 planets in it. So he's described the Patala Loka, and then Burva Loka, and then Swaga Loka. So these 3 places of the planets are described in the 10th chapter. Because at the end of the 9th chapter, that's the end of those creative prayers and that beautiful dialogue with Krishna, where he comes and he reciprocates with Lord Brahma. And then in the 10th chapter, these 3 divisions of the planetary systems have been formed. And it's also described in this 10th chapter, the 10 or 9 types of creation. It's described that there are 6 as elemental. It's described 6 are produced from the elements directly themselves, which means Krishna directly. And then 3 are produced by Lord Brahma. That's the 3 planetary systems. And then it's described that there are 3 kinds of destruction. These are the details of this 10th chapter, which, it's almost like academic in a sense, but it's knowledge, it's there, it's about Krishna. So these 3 kinds of destruction are the destruction at the end of Lord Brahma's life, then the destruction at the end of Lord Brahma's day, and the destruction of the individual bodies of the jivas. So it's 3 types of... This gives us great faith, If you go and sit in any other school of spiritual life and they don't know the answers to all these questions in such minute detail, then how can you put your full faith in that? Because they don't come up with the goods at the end of the day. They don't have the answers at the end of the day. So perhaps there's something missing there. But in this Bhagavat Purana, there is nothing missing, not a detail. And as we go on through, more and more we see the scrutiny, like under a mic, everything is explained in so much detail. You can't go wrong. If you absorb this, at least for some period of our lives, these details, then, as I said previously, I'm sure the Lord will give us great mercy of taking the trouble to find out about his creation. It's not the priority. Our priority is to put our hearts in Braj Lila and to stay there. But actually knowing these details can support that. There's nothing separate from Krishna. And then it's described that the rest of this chapter is various descriptions of creations, the creation of the false ego, etc., of identification of body and mind, etc. These are all described in absolute detail. And amongst this 10th chapter, Vidura interjects at one point and asks about time. And Maitreya doesn't answer immediately, but he begins to answer in the 11th chapter. The 11th chapter is entitled Calculation of Time, and it's the calculation of time from the atom. They take it at the very, very smallest point, and it's called a Trashurena, Trashurenu. It's the smallest point of time. An interesting fact that's described here is that time is invisible. Time itself is impersonal. Time itself is like the Brahma Jyoti of Sri Krishna. It doesn't have any qualities. It's not visible. This is the nature. And it's also described in this chapter how time is a separation from Krishna. It's a buffer. It's keeping the conditioned jivas away from Krishna through time. And if we consider our lives are only wound up with past, present, and future. This is what we're always thinking about. This is what keeps us in conditioned consciousness. In the spiritual consciousness, there is no such thing as time. There is no past, present, or future. It's eternal time. And that's why we can really never fully understand what is called Jiva Tattva, because we haven't had experience of eternality. In our consciousnesses, we haven't experienced that. So this description of time is quite fascinating, because it's so much in detail. It goes from this tiniest little point, and actually Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is describing when you see the sunlight passing through the lattice in a window, you can see tiny little particles. And it's these little particles that you can equate with this first instance of the most minute fraction of time. So we go from this atom, and then it's described as you join two atoms together, then you get something else, and you join two of those doubles together and you get something else, and you join two of those together and eventually you come to 1 millisecond. So from there, that's how it's coming. And then eventually he goes all the way through all these different names. Even one point in great detail it's described that if you have a gold pot, and it must be gold, and you place it, there's a hole in it where I think it's milk has to come out, and the amount of time it takes, and that hole has to be pierced by a silver rod, because a silver rod has certain qualities and properties that create a certain size hole that is described, and the definition is that when one drop comes, this represents one particular point of time. So this whole description is there, very elaborately, scientifically presented, where there's no movement away from. You can't go out of that boundaries of pure science. When you have it presented like that, it's rock solid. And if anyone ever does this experiment, it was done by the sages initially in the description to describe this one particular point of time. I'll read it to you for a second. It's quite fascinating. The measuring pot for one nadika or danda, that's a point of time, can be prepared with a 6 pal weight, that means 14-ounce pot of copper, in which a hole is bored with a gold probe weighing 4 masha and measuring 4 fingers long. When the pot is placed on water, the time before the water overflows in the pot is called one danda. I think that's amazing, you know. It's so incredible to read the extent of detail that these personalities have thought this is an important enough topic to describe in such detail. So for me personally, it gives me great faith and confidence, you know, that if I choose in this life to understand everything in existence, all I have to do is keep reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then actually any answer will be revealed. So then, of course, he goes into the higher states of time. And it's very wonderful to appreciate how from the lower planets up to the higher planets are all changing states of time. Like we know already for Brahma, Lord Brahma's 1 second. Like in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, he goes back to Brahma Loka for 1 second and comes back. A whole year has passed here. Like King Indradumna, when he went to see Lord Jagannath in the spiritual, in Satyaloka, and he came back. Am I telling it right? Yes. Someone listening to me? Okay, and then when he came back, his whole kingdom had been covered with sand, and the palace that he'd built for Nila Madhav had been covered with sand. So that's another example of that time difference, and the time difference between this planet and the heavenly planets. 1 day here is equal to 6 months in the heavenly planets, like that. So these time changes going from hellish planetary time up to Satyaloka time. The contrast in time. And then it's described in this 11th chapter, this calculation of time from the atom, how the different ages, like in Kali, it's 432,000 years, and then the next age is double that. 864,000 years is Dwarpa Yuga, and then 1,296,000 years is Treta Yuga, and then Satya Yuga is 1,728,000 years. So it's like doubling each time in the different ages. So this is what's described in the 11th chapter, in the calculation of time. So Maitreya Rishi is taking the time and trouble to explain all this to the inquisitive Vidura. And then in this 12th chapter, we're going quite quickly through now, there's beautiful descriptions now of Visharga. All what we've just described now, since these prayers for creative energy, we've come into the second category, the subcategory of creation. We've come into Lord Brahma's creation. The first creation, Sarga, or Sargo, is described as all Krishna's direct manifestation. He directly from Garbhadakshay Vishnu manifests the lotus and Lord Brahma, etc. Now we're in this sub-creation, the second creation, where Lord Brahma himself is actually architecting this world that we live in. So now, in this 12th chapter, it's very, very beautiful. In this 12th chapter. Just for your interest's sake, I'll just drop back for a single second. In this aspect of time, there's a very beautiful description here by Maitreya directly. He's saying eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. This cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of color. This is what I've already said. I said there is like this buffer of color, time between Krishna and the jiva, which is the unmanifested impersonal feature of Krishna. This is the Brahman. So time is an aspect of that Brahman. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. So that's just explicit explanation about a definition of time. Now, in this 12th chapter, which is very beautiful and much more easy to understand, it's about Lord Brahma and his direct creations of this world, populating the world. And it's described that he first created what are called the nascent engagements. These cover the subtle body of the jiva. When the jiva comes into this world, he has to be covered. Otherwise, he will just commit suicide and not remain here, because he will realize that he's spirit soul, and actually this is the material dark energy. So Lord Brahma, he puts this covering on the jivas of these 5 like coats, and one of them is like fear of death. Another is illusion about false possession. Another is illusioned by the senses themselves directly. Another is anger after frustration. And another is bewilderment about this whole external material energy. So these 5 coverings, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes in Madhurya Kadambini. The same coverings. He calls it avidya, ashmitya. What is it? Rag, dvesh, and abhinivesh. These 5 coverings, they're the same. The same. You can parallel them to the same. Nascent engagements is what they're called. This is described in the 2nd verse of the 12th chapter. So we've come all this way. We've come from the whole cosmic manifestation. Now we're winding down into more explicit detail of actually Lord Brahma's creation. And in this comment, anyway, it goes on that Lord Brahma was not happy that he had done that odious task of putting those 5 coverings on the jiva. It wasn't a pleasant thing for him to have to do. So he was dissatisfied with that, and he calls it seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task. Brahma did not feel much pleasure in his activity, and therefore he purified himself by meditation on the Supreme Lord. Then he began another term of creation. And then his first creation was the 4 Kumaras, and he wanted that they would populate the worlds. But they achieved transcendental knowledge of Brahman, and they didn't want to abuse their births with just having family life. They didn't want to waste any time there. They just wanted to meditate on the Lord with all of their energy and time. So Lord Brahma, he becomes very unhappy with that, because he'd made these 4, Kumara means young person. He'd made these 4 persons like this, and he became very angry with that. And he tried to control his anger. He tried to suppress his anger. But it came out from between his eyes as a little black ball initially. And then it became a little like a blue baby and began crying very piteously. And this is Lord Shiva, the manifestation of Rudra Dev. He comes out from between when Lord Brahma is trying to suppress this anger. And at that time, Lord Brahma, he curses his these 4 Kumaras to remain in bodies as 4-year-olds. So this was the original cursing of Lord Brahma. And then this beautiful manifestation of Rudra appears and began to cry to Lord Brahma, "O destiny maker, teacher of the universe, kindly designate my name and place." And then the powerful Brahma, who was born from the lotus flower, pacified the boy with gentle words. Accepting his request, he said, "Do not cry. I shall certainly do as you desire." And then he gives Lord Shiva 11 places of residence. And it's interesting for us to hear about these places, because it's not, there's a reason for all the different phenomena of the world. For example, one of his places of residence is the sun. And it's described when someone has sunstroke, that's an example of the Rudra potency. That's an example coming from Lord Shiva, that sunstroke itself. I'll read these all to you because I find them personally very fascinating. He says, "My dear boy, I have already selected the following places for your residence: the heart, the senses, the air of life, the sky, the air, the fire." The air of life means the pran, different from the air that we breathe. The fire, the water, the earth, the sun, the moon, and austerity. And now, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he describes very beautifully how these appear in this world. He says that when the element Krodha, anger, appears, which is a formidable enemy, then sometimes the eyes blaze red with anger, like we often hear Baladev Prabhu, his eyes become angry. This is a manifestation of Lord Shiva. The principle of the heart, where if one develops anger in the heart, it is further manifested through the various senses like the eyes, hands, and legs. When a man is angry, he expresses his anger with red-hot eyes and sometimes makes a display of clenching his fists or kicking his legs. This exhibition of the Rudra principle is the proof of Rudra's presence in such places. When a man is angry, he breathes very heavily, and thus Rudra is represented in the air of life. All of these are aspects of anger. He was born from Lord Brahma's anger. So these are expressions of the Rudra feature in anger. When the sky is overcast with dense clouds and roars in anger, and when the wind blows very fiercely, the Rudra principle is manifested. And so also when the seawater is infuriated by the wind, it appears in a gloomy feature of Rudra, which is very fearful to the common man. When fire is ablaze, we can also experience the presence of Rudra. And when there is an inundation over the earth, we can understand that this is a representation of Rudra. So he goes on describing the different earthly creatures who constantly represent the Rudra element. The snake, the tiger, the lion are always representations of Rudra. Sometimes because of extreme heat of the sun, there are cases of sunstroke. And due to the extreme coldness created by the moon, there are cases of collapse. And these are all expressions of the Rudra principle. So these are the details that are described in this 12th chapter, specifically about Rudra. And then he describes in this 12th chapter how the 10 sons of Lord Brahma were manifested. These 10 sons are Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Brigu, Vashishta, Daksha. And the 10th son is Narad. And Narad is described as being born from the deliberation of Lord Brahma, his meditation. That's how Narad is manifested, which is the best part of his body. Vashishta was born from his breathing, Daksha from his thumb, Brigu from his touch, Kratu from his hand. This is all described, all these details of all these 10 prominent sons. Kadama Muni is also described as the shadow of Lord Brahma. It's like another son directly from Lord Brahma. So then we have this story which I think is very pertinent to today. In India, all across India, we have this dense fog. Where did this fog come from? Lord Brahma, he created a daughter, and her daughter's name was Vak, and she was born from his body, who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. Thus, finding their father, this is the Marichi, etc., in an act of immorality, the sages headed by Marichi, all the sons of Brahma, spoke to him as follows with great respect. They were very unhappy that Lord Brahma took the body of a deer, a stag, and began to chase his daughter for sex life. So his sons reprimanded him for this immorality. They explained that this had never gone on previously. This was shocking behavior of someone of such a transcendental nature. And then Lord Brahma, he is checked by their kind words, because they're spoken with great respect and affection. They're the sons. And he becomes disgusted with that body. And it's described that he drops that body. And that body, it's like a conception. Try and appreciate it like that. If you have a certain conception in your mind and then you just let it go completely. Perhaps you have a conception of yourself being someone who you were previously. Then you just drop it completely. And with Lord Brahma, everything he does takes on a form because of his mystical potency. So he just dropped that body. And that body takes the form of dangerous fog at night. So all this dangerous fog we have all across India, in the north of India right now. It's everywhere. It's not just locally, it's everywhere. It's very dangerous fog. And then it's described that when Lord Brahma drops that particular body, that actually was his transcendental body. And now he takes on a more materially conditioned body after that. And the rest of the creation goes on. This is what is explained here. That it was actually a transcendental body that he was dropping at that time. But it took the form of fog. Because there's another description of when he drops a body in the 20th chapter of this same canto we'll come to. Because what's happening, the way the chronological order is going through, is that Vidura is inquiring about all these things and Maitreya is speaking in answer to that. And then at the end of this chapter, when he's got through all the details of the creation, and there are so many beautiful details of different aspects of the creation here, ending up with the manifestation of Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, and his wife Satarupa, who create all of the population in the world. This is what Manu does. Manu's reign lasts for 71 cycles of Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. Times 71 is the lifespan of one Manu. So there are 14 Manus in one day of Lord Brahma. So the first Manu is being described in this 12th chapter as Swayambhuva Manu. And then he was given a beautiful wife to progenate the planets, to populate the planets. And at the end of this chapter, Vidura he's just crying out for more direct description of Krishna. And this is when Varaha pastime is spoken. This pastime of Varaha, it goes on for, I think, 7 chapters of this canto. And at the end of those 7 chapters, we come back again to Lord Brahma's creation. And in that creation, again at that time, that's in chapter 20, another body is dropped by Lord Brahma. We hear of that body being dropped when so many demonic elements were being produced from Lord Brahma's backside. They actually ran at him, these demoniac people that were produced from his backside. They ran at him to engage in sex life. They were so lusty. And he drops that body. And that body takes the form of Twilight. And Twilight, before darkness, that is the most inauspicious time of the day. That's the time when all the dacoits and the rogues come out, because now night is about to fall. We can do all our nefarious activities. They're thinking no one will see us. So this heralds that time of day. So that twilight, so these demons, they take this body that takes the form in the demons' minds as the most attractive girl, and they ravage that girl. And that's the twilight. So when you see someone on a boat going down in the sunset and it all looks beautiful, it's actually not, according to scripture, an auspicious time at all, in the sunset. That's why devotees always have the Gora Arti at this time to offset we always have prayers, we always have chanting, we always have singing, we always have a upliftment of devotional savor to balance that inauspicious twilight. And then just straight after there, it's described how he drops the dawn, which is very auspicious, in front of the devas, the demigods. And they take that dawn and they sport with it. So the dawn is very auspicious. It's the most sacred time of the day, near the Brahma Muhurta hour. So this is the description given in the 20th chapter. So I jumped ahead a little bit, connecting these two aspects of creation of Lord Brahma. That concludes in this 12th chapter, and then we're going to get 7 chapters of Varahadev, and then it's going to come back to Lord Brahma, just for one single chapter. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives that as a stage, as a step in this whole canto. So to try and appreciate the different steps in the cantos, in this one canto, the 6 steps that are described. We had the first meeting of Uddhava, Maitreya and Vidura. That was the first 4 chapters. Now we've had 8 chapters of this description of Lord Brahma's creation. That's extensive. Then we're going to get 7 chapters of Varahadev. Then we're going to get one single chapter, again returning to the creation by Lord Brahma, this Vishak. And then, that's the 4th. And then we're going to get into Kadarma Muni and his marriage to Devahuti. That's for about 4 chapters or 5 chapters also. And then we get the concluding chapters of this 3rd canto is Kapila Dev's instruction. So I think it's good for us every day to hear that sequence of chapters. So we're getting a picture. I hope my purpose of coming for 7 days is to try and give us all a picture of just the 3rd canto. I can come again after 6 or 7 weeks and do the 4th canto. So after we get that canto, we get a block of it. We get an appreciation of that space, not just some, book stuck on a shelf along with all the other, but we see what it actually embodies. They even took a photograph of Lord Brahma sitting on the lotus flower. You see? So, very wonderful. We're blessed so much to have this divine knowledge coming down through Guru Parampara. Without Guru, nothing can transpire. Nothing can be... Last night somebody had written to me, they wanted to know all esoteric answers to what is my identity in the Rasa Leela and so many things like this. And I had to explain that unless you have a Mahabhagavat Guru, you can't even approach understanding in truth of that. It's sahajya without that. It's just your imagination, your fertile imagination. Unless it's directly inspired by Guru. What is your eternal savor? What is your swarup? This is what we are all desiring through our bhajan. We want to know this. What is my... And if we want to know eagerly enough, enthusiastically enough, of course Guru will become and start to give indications of that. And gradually, by our humility and that way invoking his mercy, more and more we'll understand what is our divine swarup, what is our divine nature in seva to Radha and Krishna. And I'm sure, as I said at the beginning, that Krishna's mercy will come to us just by hearing these topics of his creation. This is his world. He made it. He's the boss. So how did he make it? In what are the details of that? It's healthy for the devotees to be informed fully of these details, because very often it's tedious going through the calculations of time. 1 atom to 2 atoms to 3 atoms to 4 atoms. Wow, give me some juice here. But still, they all connect up. It all rings into the whole picture.